The attorney wouldn't look up from the papers. That was the first thing I noticed. He just kept shuffling them, straightening the edges against the desk, over and over, like if he organized them perfectly enough, he wouldn't have to say what he was about to say. My brother sat across from me. He was picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. "Okay," the attorney finally said. "So, your parents were very clear in their wishes." I remember thinking, that's a strange way to start. I should back up. My name is not important right now. What's important is this. I am 31 years old. I work in logistics management, and for the past 6 years I have been quietly, steadily, unremarkably paying for my family's life. Not all of it, but enough. The mortgage assistance started in 2019. My parents hit a rough patch. My dad's hours got cut. My mom's car needed a transmission, and somehow, in the way these things happen in families, I was the one who had the money. Not a lot, but more than them, so I started covering $800 a month toward their mortgage. It was supposed to be temporary, 3 months, maybe 4, until my dad got back on his feet. It lasted 4 years. Along the way, other things got added. My brother's car insurance. He couldn't keep a job long enough to maintain a policy in his own name, and my dad asked if I could just add him to mine because it would be cheaper anyway. Then the cell phone plan. 3 lines, mom, dad, my brother, all on my account. Then the occasional grocery run that turned into every other week. Then a medical bill my parents couldn't cover. Then another. I didn't resent it, that's the truth, and I want to say it plainly because I think people expect me to say I was angry the whole time, building up, secretly furious. I wasn't. I loved my parents, and my brother even when he frustrated me, even when he showed up at holidays and made jokes about my corporate job and my fancy apartment while I was the one quietly covering his car insurance. Even then, I loved him. I just didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. My dad passed first. January 2 years ago, heart failure. It was fast, which the doctor said was a mercy, and I suppose it was. I flew home, handled the arrangements, made the calls, took the time off work. My brother showed up the day before the funeral and left 2 days after. Mom took it hard, which made sense. 51 years of marriage. After that, the calls got more frequent. She'd ring me on a Tuesday morning just to talk, and I was always happy to pick up even from my desk, even when I had meetings. Some nights I'd be on the phone with her for 2 hours just listening. She was grieving. I was grieving too, but I was also still here, still functioning, so I kept functioning. The financial help continued, more than before actually, because now there was only one income, her Social Security and a small pension, and the house costs stayed the same. My brother moved back in with her 6 months after Dad died. He said it was to keep her company. I thought that was kind at first. I told him so. She shouldn't be alone, he said. I know, I said. Thank you for being there. I meant it. What I didn't know was that while I was sending money and paying bills from 800 miles away, my brother was having long private conversations with my mother about the will. Mom passed in November, a stroke. She was in the hospital for 11 days, and then she was gone. I was there for most of it. I took 2 weeks off work, stayed in the house I grew up in, slept in my old room, which still had the same curtain rods from 1998. My brother and I sat in the hospital together. We didn't talk much. I thought that was grief too. Just 2 people too tired and sad to fill the silence. The attorney's office was 2 weeks after the funeral. His name was Mr. Decker, and he had been my parents' lawyer for almost 20 years. I'd met him once before, briefly, at some event I can barely remember. He had kind eyes, I thought, when I walked in, until he wouldn't look up from the papers. Your parents were very clear in their wishes, he said again, and then he read us the will. My brother got the house. He got the savings account, roughly $42,000 that my parents had accumulated over decades. He got the car. He got the furniture, the jewelry, the small collection of items my father had kept in a wooden box on his dresser that I used to sneak looks at when I was a kid, his watch, a folded letter, some coins from a trip he took before I was born. I got a paragraph, a single paragraph that said, essentially, that my parents loved me, that they knew I was capable and strong, that they were proud of how I'd built my life, and that they were leaving their estate to my brother because he needed it more. Because he needed it more. I read that line 3 times. Mr. needed it more. I read that line 3 times. Decker was quiet. My brother was quiet. The room had that particular kind of stillness that happens when everyone knows something terrible has just occurred, and no one wants to be the first to acknowledge it. "Is there anything you'd like to ask?" Mr. Decker said. I looked up at him. I thought about everything I wanted to say. I thought about the $800 a month for 4 years, the car insurance, the phone plan, the groceries, the medical bills, the Tuesday morning calls, the 2 weeks I took off work without pay to sit in a hospital room and hold my mother's hand while my brother went home each night to the house, his house, apparently, to sleep in his own bed. "No," I said. "Thank you for your time." I picked up my bag. I walked out. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time. It was cold. November in the Midwest is a particular kind of gray that gets into your bones. And I just sat there with the engine off, watching the condensation form on my windshield. Then I took out my phone and opened my banking app. I didn't do anything rash. I want to be clear about that. I didn't transfer anything. I didn't access anything that wasn't mine. I simply looked at what was mine and started making a list. The mortgage assistance, I had a standing transfer set up. $800, first of every month, automatic. I opened the transfer settings and scheduled it to stop at the end of the current cycle. The car insurance, my brother was a secondary driver on my policy. I called my insurance company from the parking lot. I told them I needed to remove a driver from my policy. The woman on the phone was cheerful and efficient. It took 6 minutes. The cell phone plan, 3 lines. I called the carrier. I explained that I needed to remove 2 lines from my account, effective end of billing cycle. The representative asked if there was anything they could do to keep my business. I said no thank you. I sat there a little longer. The windshield was almost fully fogged. Then I drove to a diner 2 blocks away, ordered coffee and eggs, and ate alone at a table by the window, watching people walk past on the sidewalk outside, living their ordinary Tuesday afternoon lives, completely unaware that mine had just cracked clean down the middle. I didn't call my brother. This was the thing that surprised me most about myself. I had always been the fixer. The one who made the call, smoothed the edge, said, "Let's just talk about it and I'm sure we can work something out." I had been playing that role my entire life without fully realizing it was a role. I went home. I went back to work. I didn't block anyone, didn't send an angry message, didn't write the 12-page letter I composed in my head every night for the first week. I just stopped. Stopped the transfers. Stopped the extra calls. Stopped being the person who reached out first, every time without fail, because I had somehow decided that keeping this family connected was my personal responsibility. I stopped, and I waited to see what would happen. The first week, nothing. The second week, my brother texted to say he hoped I was doing okay. I replied, "Thanks, you too." That was it. The third week, a Tuesday. Of course it was a Tuesday. My phone rang at 9 a.m. My brother. I picked up. "Hey," he said. "So, I got a notice from the insurance company." "Okay," I said. "It says I've been removed from your policy." "Yes," I said. Silence. "I mean, why?" I thought about how to answer that. I had, honestly, rehearsed this moment a few different ways in my head. There was the version where I said everything, all of it, all at once. The years and the money and the will and the paragraph. There was the version where I stayed very calm and clinical and just stated facts. There was the version where I cried, which I'd been afraid of. What actually came out was simpler than any of those. "The policy is in my name," I said. "I needed to make some changes, but I need insurance. I can't drive without insurance." "I know," I said. "You'll need to get your own policy." Another silence. Longer this time. "This is because of the will," he said. I didn't answer. "Look," he said, and his voice shifted into something I recognized, the tone he used when he was about to explain why something that had happened was actually not his fault. "I didn't ask them to do that. That was their decision. I can't control what they decided." "I know," I said. "So why are you punishing me?" And there it was, the word I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting for it. Punishing. As if the natural state of things, the correct, default, neutral state, was me covering his expenses, as if removing myself from that arrangement was an act of aggression rather than simply a return to baseline. "I'm not punishing you," I said, and I meant it, completely. "I'm just not going to be the one who handles it anymore." He said some other things after that. He brought up Mom, brought up how hard it had been, brought up the fact that the house needed work, and he wasn't sure how he was going to manage the property taxes. I listened. I said I understand in the places where it was true, and I stayed quiet in the places where it wasn't. Before we hung up, he said, "I just thought family looked out for each other." I held the phone for a moment. "I thought so too," I said. Then I said goodbye and I set my phone face down on my desk and I looked out my window at the street below for a long time. The property tax comment nagged at me. I won't pretend it didn't. There's a particular kind of guilt that comes with being the functional one, the one who kept a job and a savings account and a reasonable credit score when the people around you didn't. It's not a guilt you earned, but it lives in you anyway because you've been carrying it so long it started to feel like it belonged there. I talked to a friend about it. She's known me for 12 years. She let me go through the whole thing, the will, the parking lot, the insurance call, my brother on the phone. And then she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You know what's interesting? You're asking me if you did something wrong, but I haven't heard you mention once what you needed." I didn't have an answer for that. "What did you need?" she said. "From them, from any of them. What did you actually need?" I thought about it for a real minute. Not a polite, reflexive minute, an actual one. "I think I needed someone to notice," I finally said. She nodded. "And did they?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. It's been 4 months. My brother and I have spoken 3 times. Functional conversations, a question about some paperwork, a notification about the phone account, a brief exchange around the holidays. We are not estranged. We are also not close. And I think for the first time in my life, I'm allowing those 2 things to coexist without trying to fix the distance between them. The house is his, the savings are his, the wooden box with my father's watch, and the folded letter and the foreign coins. I think about that box sometimes, but it's his now too. What I kept was something I didn't even realize I'd lost until I stopped giving it away. My own money, my own time, my own mental space on a Tuesday morning, the quiet of a phone that doesn't ring with a problem I'm expected to solve. I kept myself. I've been looking at apartments closer to my friend from earlier. A new city, not a huge change, just a shift. A chance to be somewhere that I chose, entirely for my own reasons, without factoring in how far it was from people who might need something. I'm not angry at my parents. I've sat with that a lot, turned it over, tried it from different angles. What I feel is more like sadness. A slow, settled sadness for all the versions of us that could have existed, for the conversations we could have had if someone had just been willing to say things plainly. My dad had a phrase he used when one of us got hurt as kids. He'd crouch down, look at whatever scraped knee or jammed finger we were crying over, and he'd say, "Let me see it." You can't fix what you won't look at. I think about that a lot now. I think he meant it for the small things. But it turns out it's true for the big ones, too. You can't fix what you won't look at. And sometimes, when you finally look at it clearly, what you find is that it wasn't yours to fix in the first place. That's the part that took me the longest to understand. And the part I think that I'll be learning for a while yet. But I'm learning it. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing it on my own terms. Which, it turns out, is the only way it ever really works. There's a moment, right after something breaks, when everything gets very quiet. Not peaceful quiet, more like the quiet of a room after a door slams. That's what the attorney's office felt like. Mr. Court, Decker reading those pages, my brother picking at his sleeve, and me sitting there realizing that the story I'd been telling myself about my family for 31 years was just that. A story. The version I'd believed was this. I helped because I loved them, and because I loved them, and because I loved them, they saw me. That's how I understood it. But what I learned, slowly, the way you learn the things that matter, is that being seen and being useful are not the same thing. I had confused the two for so long that I didn't know where one ended and the other began. What my brother inherited wasn't just a house or a savings account. He inherited the result of a pattern that had been running for years, one where effort went unrecognized, where the person who showed up the most was taken the most for granted, where "she'll be fine" became a reason to look away instead of a reason to look closer. That pattern had a cost, and the cost, I eventually understood, was mine to stop paying, not out of bitterness, out of honesty. The calls I made in that parking lot weren't revenge. I've thought about that word a lot, and it doesn't fit. Revenge is about making someone else feel something. What I did was quieter than that. I just stopped extending myself into spaces that had never made room for me. The insurance, the phone plan, the transfers, all of it had been mine. Removing it wasn't taking something away from my brother. It was taking something back for myself. Jess asked me what I actually needed, and I couldn't answer her right away. That's the part that stayed with me. Because I had spent so many years being competent, handling things, solving things, being the one who didn't fall apart, that I had almost completely lost track of what I wanted. Competence is useful, but it's not the same as wisdom, and I think I had to lose something significant before I understood the difference. The wisdom was this: you cannot sustain giving from a place that was never replenished. Not financially, not emotionally, not in any form. It sounds simple. It isn't. It takes something, a will reading, a parking lot, a Tuesday morning phone call, to make it real. What I'm left with now is an anger. It's something I describe as clarity and a kind of stubborn willingness to stay in it. To not go back to being easy, to not smooth this over because it's uncomfortable, to let the distance be what it is, and trust that I'm not required to close it alone. That last part, the staying with it even when it's hard, that took more out of me than any check I ever wrote. I think that's the thing no one tells you about setting a limit with people you love. It doesn't feel strong. It feels like loss. It feels like driving away from a parking lot in November with a fogged-up windshield and no clear sense of what comes next. But you drive anyway, and eventually the window clears.